What is up, everybody? I'm your Legendary Commander, and welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3. In this video, we're going to talk about my top 10 spells. And this is more my current top 10 spells, since the game is still in early access. Now, this isn't in order, but one of my first and most favorite spells is Inflict Wounds. Inflict Wounds does a lot of damage. Rolling 3d10 at first level, anybody can technically learn this spell, because if they become a Magic Initiate, they can get Inflict Wounds, so long as they take Cleric. This spell is relatively good for mages who happen to be up and close to the battle for some reason, and it might deter the enemy from closing in on you, especially after they see you crit and do over 30 damage. And it's a roll to hit, so Bless, Bane, all that stuff is going to have an effect on this spell. Another spell that I'm really fond of is Scorching Rey. Scorching Rey is probably one of the most fun spells to have because it allows you to either focus your fire or spread it out. Each ray is a roll to hit and does 2d6 damage, which means you can focus all your rays on one target, and if they all hit, you do damage, and then it can crit on top of that. So that means you can kill multiple targets, or you can just dump a lot of damage into one target. Another spell that warmed its way into my heart was Healing Words. On the surface, this spell looks absolutely terrible, but once you get to know it, it turns out to be really useful, as you can technically pick up 2 players with this spell. If 2 of your allies are down, you can literally stabilize them from across the room and then run over to the other guy and pick him up using the help action, because the spell uses a bonus action, which means it can also be used after you take your action. The next one on the list is Magic Missile, probably one of the spells that new players disregard, while older players know this spell is powerful because that 100% hit accuracy means no one can ever prevent you from hitting them. They see a d4 plus 1 and it doesn't do a lot of damage, but that's fine because this spell is 100% accurate if the enemy has spawned a bunch of illusions or copies of themselves that can hit you each individually. When all you gotta do is hit them once, why not spread out Magic Missile on all of them? So the next spell on my list now is Guidance, and this spell is, well, a cantrip actually. Guidance is a really strong spell, adding a d4 modifier to most things you're going to do, be it a stealth roll, a persuasion check, a history or an insight check, all the different types of checks you're going to make, well, it adds a d4. It is a cantrip, which means it can be casted as many times as you want. However, unlike the next spell, Bless, it does not aid in combat. But with that said, let's move on to the next spell, and it's Bless actually. Bless is a wonderful spell to have. Before any battle, you should use Bless, adding a d4 to all attack rolls. Any sort of roll you're going to be making, Bless is going to give you a d4 bonus to whatever you're doing. This can make a huge difference on spells that have trouble hitting, or maybe if the enemy is just really high in defense with their AC sitting high. Well, at least with Bless, you can improve your chances of actually hitting them, especially in combination of other techniques. More on that up here. So the next spell on my list, and this is a fun one, but it doesn't always work, and so it's a little lower on my list, and that is Thunderwave. This spell is really awesome because at level 1, you can do 2d8 thunder damage. And then if they don't make their constitution check, they can go flying, which means you can knock people off the side. And then when they fall, they go prone, thus giving you advantage if you make any attacks within 5 feet of him, or at least burning up his movement speed. So another spell on my list, and this one fights with the top spot, is Shatter. Shatter is probably one of the best spells to have ever. With its 20-foot radius, it means it can hit a lot of targets, and it does 3d8 thunder damage. This spell is also a saving throw spell, which means it always does damage, which means low health enemies will probably die or get very injured. Meanwhile, high health enemies are at least going to take some damage, and if they don't make that saving throw, it's going to even be worse for them. The spell can be used to break concentration. It can hit targets that cast illusions. This spell is just really good. Now, the top spell on my list is Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast, of course, being a cantrip, means you can cast it as many times as you want. Eldritch Blast is consistently a d10, provided you can hit, and that's before you add any Eldritch invocations if you are a warlock. If you add Agonizing Blast as your Eldritch invocation, you can now add your Charisma modifier to the damage, meaning this thing is no longer a d10, but it's a d10 plus whatever that modifier might be. And that's just the start, because you can add other Eldritch invocations, such as the Push ability, which allows you to push people off ledges, meaning if done right, that means more damage. Now you could use the Pull feature to pull people off ledges instead, but most of the time the enemy keeps the ledge behind them, and also if you're going to use this spell, don't you want to push your enemy away as far back as possible to keep them from touching your squishy self, or would you rather pull them 10 feet towards you? Now my final spell is kind of that spell you use, I guess, when all your other spells in this list have failed you. When the enemy is just too strong, and you need to pick somebody up maybe, or just run. It's Misty Step. Misty Step allows you to move 60 feet or 18 meters in game, which is essentially your dash. It's a bonus action, which means you can Misty Step away from opponent, then dash, and then run another 18 meters, getting a large distance away from the opponent. But it doesn't have to be used to run away. It could be used to teleport nearby a player and then pick them up because you couldn't either run that area, either due to difficult terrain, enemies in your way, or they're just too far away, and if you burned your dash action to run all the way over there, well, you wouldn't be able to lift them up, would you? Misty Step can be used as a stealth spell. If you're trying to sneak around and you don't want people to see you, well, you can stealth from one point to another. Just make sure you crouch afterwards. If you want advantage, all you have to do is Misty Step behind them, and now you're behind them, which means you get advantage. It's a bonus action, which means you can still strike them. Misty Step is one of those spells that everyone should have. But guys, with all that said, that is going to be it for this one. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure to tell your friends. But y'all take care. And I'll catch you next time.